مشاهدينا مرحبا بكم في حوارات السياق. سلط موقع عين أوروبية على التطرف الضوء على التهديد الذي تمثله جماعة الإخوان المسلمين في الهند خلال الفترة الأخيرة، مشيرا إلى أن الذراع المحلية للتنظيم تعمل على انتشار الفوضى في الشوارع وتحاول إشعال حرب أهلية دينية، لافتا إلى أنه يحصل التنظيم على تمويل خارجي بينما تدعمه بخبث المعارضة الهندية للإطاحة بحكومة مودي. عموما للمزيد من المتابعة ينضم إلينا الأستاذ أجمل سهيل، المؤسس والرئيس المشارك لتحالف مكافحة المخدرات والإرهاب في ألمانيا. أستاذ أجمل مرحبا بك معنا.
Pleasure to be with you.
بحسب مقالك في عين أوروبية على التطرف، ذكرت أن جماعة الإخوان باتت تمثل تهديدا متناميا في الهند، كيف ذلك؟
To be honest, it has a lot of angles, international, regional, and domestic. So if you give me some time, that I will just touch all these angles. So first of all, I would like to touch the international angle of that, because if you know that India's involvement in the Middle East, and also specifically in cooperation engagement with Israel. That makes it possible for Turkey to react, because Turkey think that a collaboration between India, or strategic partnership between India and Israel, is a national security threat, or posing a national security threat. The second thing is the Indian involvement with the Greece and the Mediterranean. So this is the two main issues that the Turks are not happy with that, and therefore, you know, that the AK party, or the Erdogan party is, of course, derived the tenets and the ideology they derive from the Muslim Brotherhood, and therefore they are supporting the Muslim Brotherhood how to challenge India. And the second thing is there is another country like Qatar. So my information shows that India is turning to the electromobility. It means that over 1 billion population of this country will no longer be fond of the energy sector, which is produced in some of these Gulf countries, and on the top of that, Qatar. So Qatar will have a blowback on their revenue, and therefore they are also joining the whole campaign against India and collaborating with Turkey. And then, of course, for having this materialize, they need Pakistan. So without Pakistan, it's not possible, and therefore they are in close cooperation militarily, intelligently, to support all those factors, and regional and also the domestic factors that could somehow challenge the security within India, and therefore they are there. And then, of course, the regional issues, you know, that turning Afghanistan a somehow democratic country, turning to a more radical country by the advent of Taliban. So that is also a sort of, it's perceived by some of the Indian Muslims that when the Taliban are able to, for example, to defeat the United States and also the West, and also establish a radical Islamic system, then we are also, it is also possible for us. And then, of course, there are some domestic issues like grievance, like discriminations against a majority of the Muslims in that country, and also the manner that the Indian government, how they, for example, marginalized these Muslim society in India, and that gave us the opportunity for a lot of domestic thinkers and domestic groups, and also organizations, that they could also get to involve with the Muslim Brotherhood. And then you see that this Muslim Brotherhood is also one of the main topic, and also for a lot of today's well-known terrorist organizations like Al Qaeda and also Al-Shabaab, things like that. Even Osama bin Laden was also indoctrinated and somehow mentored by Abdullah Izam, who is one of the fond of Muslim Brotherhood. So these are the issues that, if we put these all pieces together, and then it makes the Indian society pretty much vulnerable for penetration of Muslim Brotherhood in the Indian, and also not in India, but in the whole subcontinent.
هل لك أن تطلعني على أنشطة جماعة الإخوان في الهند؟ ما مدى قوة الجماعة هناك وتأثيرها على الأرض؟
So they also one of the grievances, one of the how they want to project their power in India is that they are now challenging the Indian constitution. So the Indian constitution is depend on the three main sectors, which is the secularism, and second is the democracy, and also Hindu nationalism. And then when they approach, for example, these local radical groups or organizations that they think that could be supported to challenge, and then telling them that the Indian constitution is the anti-Islam, and it is against against Islam, and therefore it is your turn to get in. So there are some organizations like Popular Front of India, and also there is a National Women's Front, and also the Islamic Students Movement. These three organizations are really domestic organizations, and then they are just trying to, as I said before, that to challenge the power the Indian government or the current prime minister has it. So they are using it that way. And secondly, there are some politicians and also some other political parties, and they use this uh, like a way that to challenge the President Modi, and therefore that's possible for them to penetrate in India. And beside that, for example, Ghazwatul Hind is another organization is affiliated to Al Qaeda and also somehow to ISIS. And these two organizations made it possible, or they encourage and supported financially, ideologically, and psychologically, and strategically to be involved in the Indian society. And down the road, you see that there were some. We have seen some clashes on the streets, and there were protests. There were processions, and they were whining for that the situation in India is not in collaboration or friendly environment for the Muslim society, and therefore the Muslim society is pushed to against the wall, and therefore they have to react. So these are the things that it made it possible for the Muslim Brotherhood to operate in India in details.
هل خطاب الإخوان في الهند منطقي لجهة بناء سرديتهم على تجاوزات بحقوق المسلمين؟
Yeah, so the Muslim Brotherhood narrative is that you know that which nowadays we are talking about the internet, and about we are talking about the for example darknet and things like that. Somehow that had a lot of advantages for the whole world or across the world, but it has also disadvantages. The disadvantages that most of the terrorist organizations they use that the darknet and also the internet in their favor. When there is something happening, of course, I know that the Indian government is not approaching this issue perfectly, and they are not talking or engaging with the Indian Muslim society in the right way. Of course, there are some uh, misperception in that way, but these organizations like terrorist organizations or these non-violent organizations, they are using this power of the internet. As you know, that the Indian, the old Chinese say, there's the old Chinese saying to kill one and to put in fear the whole society with thousands. With the internet, so today, if we kill someone and we will put billions of people in fear or panic a lot of people. This is the way that the Muslim Brotherhood and also the other affiliates or associates organizations are operating in India. They're using the same. whenever something happens, for example, it happens everywhere, even in Germany, in heart of the Western democracy. Something happens when there is a human being. Of course, there are something wrong and right, and of course, therefore, there is law enforcement agencies to enforce the law when the law is disobeyed. So when it happens in India, they make it quite bigger and bigger, that to get the attention of the whole society, and then telling that the Muslims are treated as a second class citizen. And then this situation, it makes it possible for a lot of Indians to be recruited in favor of Muslim Brotherhood or Ghazwat al-Hind, which is one of the terrorist organizations which is banned in India, or some other organization I mentioned, that the Popular Front of India, or National Women Front, and also the Islamic movement of students in India. These are the organizations. They're using these approaches. They're using these grievance and to recruit more people and more people, and then to involve in sort of challenging the security and the government of India.
إخوان الهند هل هم مختلفون عن الإخوان في البلاد العربية؟ هل لديهم مرشد؟
To my mind, as I'm doing a lot of research on or countering the violent extremist organization and non-violent extremist organizations. To my mind, what the Muslim Brotherhood in Arab world is perceived to be a non-violent institutions or organizations, which is more has what a lot of fundaments of the Arab world, which deals with, for example, economy, with the governance, with the society, with politics and things like that. But the Muslim Brotherhood in our region, not only in India but in the whole our region, it has turned to be a violent extremist organization. Like we are talking about Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri. He was also one of the top member, or one of the person or the follower of Muslim Brotherhood. But you know that he was really radicalized. You know that the radicalization is a process from being introduced to the organizations, and then to accept the idea, and then to be indoctrinated, and then to accept the extreme view of an ideology, and then you want to apply this ideology or this view into practice, and then you need to use, for example, tactics, what is terrorism in my idea is a tactic. So if you see that most of these Muslim front runners in Afghanistan and also in the region, they apply terrorism, they apply violent extremism in the region to for example, to use it against the former Soviet Union or against the United States, and so on and so forth. This is my thinking is that the Muslim Brotherhood in this continent, I mean, in the Indian subcontinent, also in our region, is more violent. This is the way different. And of course, we have like you said, the murshid. We have a guru. It's called Maulana Maududi. Maulana Maududi is, of course, his approach was not violent, but today is Muslim Brotherhood in this region is quite and severely violent and extreme version of the Muslim Brotherhood.
ماذا عن الحكومة الهندية؟ أين دورها من هذا التهديد، خصوصا وأن لها علاقات متميزة مع دول في المنطقة تصنف تنظيم الإخوان إرهابيا؟
The first thing is they do it. Their policy is more reactionary to be actionary. So first of all, they banned all these groups are actively employing or applying the Muslim Brotherhood approaches in India, which I named. And secondly, is that they are confronting, for example, the countries which export or the countries which provide the safe haven for such an ideology to nurture and then to challenge the Indian security. That is Pakistan. So of course they put significant pressure on Pakistan to somehow to minimize their role, be involved in that region. And of course, they are organizations like Jaish al-Muhammad and Lashkar Taiba. These are two organizations are looking forward to uh, 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 provide freedom for Kashmiris. But my idea is that if India is really wanna go forward with the policy to curb this the Muslim Brotherhood in the region, is that they have to support somehow the democratic principles in the region. And secondly, of course, they have to change their policy toward the Muslims and leave no ground for the terrorist organizations and also the Muslim Brotherhood to misuse them and to apply them as a narrative to recruit more people. And then, of course, like countries like Saudi Arabia or like UAE or also Egypt, these are the countries who are their stance is very, very harsh against this Muslim Brotherhood, and then they have to find a common ground and common approach that collaborate with one another. At the same like Turkey, Qatar, and Pakistan is collaborating and supporting the Muslim Brotherhood to challenge the Indian security. And of course, India could use also the same opportunity to challenge, or at least not to challenge, but to curb the challenges that could be produced or could be provided by the Muslim Brotherhood and the countries, and also some of the organizations are actively behind that.
في مقالك تحدثت عن صلة بين جماعة الإخوان في الهند وجماعة مسلحة وإرهابية. ما الأدلة على ذلك؟
So the connection is, that as I said, like Osama bin Laden, who was mentored by Abdullah Izam, and Abdullah Izam was one of the Muslim Brotherhood front runner in Arab world, and then he during the Soviet occupations he was in Pakistan, and he himself, Osama bin Laden, he himself praised Muslim Brotherhood tenets and Muslim Brotherhood ideology for giving him an opportunity to think twice about dealing with the non-Muslim countries or non-Muslim ideology. This is the first evidence. The second evidence is, of course, Ayman al-Zawahiri. We talk about it. He was himself one of the Muslim Brotherhood front runner in the region. He was also in that regard. And then, of course, when we are talking about Ghazwat al-Hind, so Ghazwat al-Hind is one of the franchise of Al Qaeda in the region. And of course, then if we follow this up, and then it ends up in the Muslim Brotherhood. So why the India stance is still smooth about it? Because as I said, so. The Indian Muslims, I mean, the Indian government, first of all, to find a possible ground that to get rid of what the Muslim Brotherhood or the terrorist organizations they are using as a tool to operate and also to recruit. So this is a long run policy. And then if they start cracking down, and then this cracking down will not work, because in the 20 years of the U.S. war on terror, there was only capture and kill. That did not help. So the capture and kill policy does not work. So the India has learned a lot of lessons from the U.S. involvement in the war on terror, and therefore their policies have been smoother. And my idea is, or my hope is, that India will find out what these grievances are. For example, if there is less education possibility for the Muslim society in India, or there is no job opportunity, or less job opportunity, or there is less opportunity for the Muslim society to be involved in the Indian politics and Indian society, and they have to just find it out, and then to get rid of these grievances, and then in long term, that would be possible that the Muslim people, aside of the Indian or Hindus or Christian, will live in peace and tranquility, and then there would be no possibility for the Muslim Brotherhood or any other organization to penetrate, and also to use these grievances as a tool to recruit more people to finally to engage in and challenge the Indian security.
هل صعود الإخوان في الهند ناتج عن محاولة المعارضة الهندية استخدام هذه الجماعة كسلاح لهزيمة حكم مودي؟ هل لك أن تشرح لي الدينامية هنا؟ عدوي صديقي، أليس كذلك؟
So you know that if we check it as a researcher on a terrorism and violent extremist groups, we divide or that could be my divisions. We divide in three categories. The first is the psychological terrorist groups or organizations who are psychologically against a specific strata of the society. For example, if you go to the United States, so the psychological terrorists, they hate, for example, the Black Africans in the U.S. And if they kill them, psychologically they get happier. So, and then we have ideological terrorist organizations, which has specific ideologies like Islamic ideologies. We have communism ideology, or we have any ideology, if you name it. So, and then we have also the strategical terrorism, which has nothing to do with psychology, which has nothing to do with, for example, ideology, but they are a strategical tools for some countries or groups to be used. If you see that there is no connection, and during the war, during the Russian or the Soviet occupation in Afghanistan, there was no connections between the Islamic organization operating against the Soviet occupations, between these organizations and Washington or the United States. There was nothing, because U.S. has its own values and they have their own values. But the U.S., the CIA, use these organizations for their geopolitical objectives. So, and these organizations in India, coming back to India, these organizations, however, the opposition, Indian opposition, they do not have a shared values. They do not have shared principles, but they are willing to defeat their opposition, which is the government of Modi, and then they could apply these organizations for their geopolitical and their local interests and use them as a tool to defeat that.
سؤالي الأخير عن تأثير جماعة الإخوان في الهند، هل هو مماثل لتأثيرهم في باكستان؟
I don't think so. That would be the same. So in Pakistan, the people or the society is already somehow radicalized. It has some philosophy behind it, because during the Russian occupation or the Soviet occupation in Afghanistan, and the United States used Pakistan as a battleground or as a safe haven for these radical organizations, and they were trying to indoctrinate some of the society to support the war against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. So it means the Pakistani society is more vulnerable to the radicalism or also the Muslim Brotherhood. And we know that for the last couple of decades or more, we see that there were a lot of activities in the region, and specifically in Pakistan, that made it more and more possible that the people should be more religious and more and applying or accepting the extreme view of Islam or Muslim Brotherhood. But on the other hand, in India, it's quite different because in India is not a radicalized society. It's more open. It is democratic. It has secularism. But this secularism in this democratic principles or democratic norms and values made it also possible for the Muslim society and specifically Muslim Brotherhood to operate. So this is really critical. But again, as I said, India, the ball is still in the India field or ground. It's upon to the Indian government how they shoot this ball. So the best possible way is still everything is all right. We are not in the degree of that the Indian society or the Indian Muslims are radicalized. We are not in that stage. But the best way is that go to the society and work with the society together and show to the society that they are not alienated, they are not marginalized, they are not, for example, second class citizen. And these approach could help India to get rid of the situation.
أستاذ أجمل سهيل، شكرا جزيلا لك للمشاركة معنا في حوارات السياق.
My pleasure.
مشاهدينا شكرا على طيب المتابعة، إلى الملتقى.